I started riding for the GPO, the post office in London. I was delivering telegrams on a bicycle in central London. That was my first job. And then I graduated to riding the motorcycles, and they had BSA 125 Bantams. And it was just delivering telegrams on the Bantam, you know, as telegraph boys. And I was based actually on the North Circular Road, the North Road that runs around London, which is very close to the Ace Cafe, the legendary Ace Cafe. Now, it's funny because all these guys driving their Bantams every day, delivering telegrams, they came to work on super rockets and big matchless CSRs and things like that, you know, and I came with my Venom Clubman, and we'd get off our bikes and ride Bantams all day, and then go down to the Ace Cafe and hang about down there, or go up to the Busy Bee, which was another one, but it was probably about 20 miles north of where we were, and it had one of the only de-restricted roads, a de-restricted no speed limit. Yeah. And it was the last sort of stop before they got to the M1, but they hadn't built the M1 when we were going up there. But it was a de-restricted road, so you could just thrash your bikes up there, you know, it's great. I mean, you really see what they could do. And then you go to the Busy Bee, you know, and drink coffee or drink tea. You know, no one drank booze. Well, they didn't serve it anyway. But it was sort of a truck driver's stop, you know, the truck drivers pulled in, and it was greasy spoon, you know, egg and chips, everything and chips, you know, yeah. And mugs of tea, and you know the spoon to stir the tea was on a chain, and the spoon was worn down, you know, 1,000 miles on this spoon, you know. But it was great, and it was, you know, it was a lot of fun. And then, because we're all into bigger bikes, the next thing was we used to go to Brands Hatch because this friend of mine had a friend who raced at Brands, so we all went to Brands and checked it out. His name was Dennis Ainsworth, and he rode a 350 AJS 7R, and he had a matchless G50, immaculately turned out. He was always third or fourth, fifth, somewhere around there. I think he only won once, but he went on what was called the Continental Circus, where it was basically a bunch of guys that went from track to track to track in Europe and Eastern Europe. They used to go in Czechoslovakia and when it was the East and that sort of thing. And they made a living out of it. And actually, if you see Michelle Duff, that's it. Yeah, and they used to do the Continental Circus, you know. In fact, when I was at the motorcycle show, I was speaking to her about that, you know, the Continental Circus and what is Phil Reed really like and that sort of thing, you know. She's a great character. But I remember watching him, you know, race, and he was damn good. You know? So the next progression after that was going to the Isle of Man. And in 1963, I had a BSA Gold Flash 650 iron engine, plunger frame, and I put a sidecar on it, and I went up to the Isle of Man on that, and rode around the Isle of Man on this thing because everyone wanted to be Chris Vincent in those days. You know, he was fantastic sidecar rider. Probably, he may have invented the kneeler. You know, it was the motorcycle. I mean, up until that point, there was a motorcycle and there was a sidecar, and well, a platform basically. And Chris Vincent sort of put all the controls further back, probably put the fuel tank under the seat, the carbs in a very dangerous position to his masculinity, and lowered the center of gravity and just went like a rocket. And on short tracks, he was unbelievably unbeatable. And he actually won the Isle of Man TT on a BSA, beating BMWs, you know. And it wasn't a freak. He beat them, you know. It wasn't that the lead guy fell out or anything like that. I mean, it was just stupendous racing, you know. Anyway, in 1963, I went there, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, when I look back on it, it was so cheap to do. You know, they they cradled the bike off the quay in Liverpool and lowered it on the ship, and then lifted it up when you got to Douglas and plonked it down, and I think you had to drain the fuel out of the bike before they put it on the boat. That was their safety regs, you know. So you got off basically with a spoonful of fuel the other side. So I guess the steam packet company had the first gas station as you got off the boat in Douglas. Made sense. But you know, you could stay at a boarding house for, I don't know, like £7 a week, which is £7, $15 or something, you know, for the week, and and on race day the landlady would pack you sandwiches, and off you go to the races, you know, and you just drive around. Where do you want to stop today? You know, you want to stop in Peel or Craignabar or Hilbury or wherever, you know, and it was just fantastic, you know. It was really an experience. And then I went back in 1967 because it was the centennial of the race. What was it, 50 or 60 years? 60 years. And it was Harewood against Aggo, and it was just, I went on a package. You know, you met the bus somewhere in London, they drove you to the train station, you went up to Liverpool, got on the boat, got you there, I guess about 10 o'clock in the morning on the race day, ferried you around to wherever you wanted to go on the island, and then after the race, brought you back, put you on a train or on the ferry and back to Liverpool and back to London. You got off the train the next day in London, like, what was all that about, you know? But it was fantastic just to see that, you know. Well, to see some of the caliber of Agostini and Harewood, you know, plus. Anyone who gets to the Isle of Man, it's got to be good. I found this one, advertising Kijiji. The guy had spent a lot of money on it, apparently. Apparently he had a tuner, one for the head and one for the crank. So the guy was obviously he knew what he wanted. The wheels were trued, and anyway, he wanted $800 for it. He'd had a lot of tire kickers, and he was pretty firm. I could tell by the ad on Kijiji, you know, he's pretty strong in his words, like no assholes coming around, you know, making silly offers. So I saw the bike immediately, said, and he wanted 800. I said, you got it. So brought it home, and gradually, I don't like the paintwork, it's awful, but the rest of the bike is great. Again, I've lowered the seat. I've got a little bit of foam that goes on it. Apparently it's supposed to be nice and comfortable. But it's a 550. It'll do 100 miles an hour. That's all I want. I don't do that stuff anymore. 100 miles an hour is fine for me if I ever get there. And it looks like a nice old bike. And it's, you know, there's no onboard. Even the Sabre would tell me what temperature the engine was at or whatever. But did it? It was digital shit on the dash. But anyway, this doesn't have a dash. Doesn't even clocks yet. They're over there somewhere. And that's all I want. You know, open the tank, see if there's fuel in it, or shake it. You know there's fuel in it. That's fine. You want to know what speed the engine's doing. You want to know what speed you're doing. And that's about it. You know, and it will be ready next year. I promise. I'm going to customize it. Obviously, change the paint, and I want to sort of British racing green. I've always liked it. I don't know why. And I'm not going to say it's going to be a Sunday riding bike, but it's not a long distance bike. I do plan to go to Montreal on it, but it'll be in stages. It's not the sort of bike where I would load it up and do the whole trip. I'd stop in Kingston and, you know, maybe go up to Ottawa and stop there and visit. And, you know, it's a couple of 100 miles or a couple of 100 kilometers at a shot. It's, you know, it's not going to be a comfortable ride, I don't think. I don't know yet. It's a challenge, and I mean, it's great. I'm really looking forward to getting on it and just see what it's all about. I mean, I built it up the road in first and second, sitting on the frame with no headlight and no nothing actually, and it felt good. So, and it's got a really nice smooth motor under it, very responsive, and I just want to see it properly roadworthy and out on the road, and yeah, see what it can do. Yeah. So when I went to pick up the bike, the guy told me it's been in a shed for 5 years, somewhat covered. He said, obviously you're going to have to put fresh fuel in here, new battery, and clean the carbs out, have them professionally cleaned, etc., etc. So when I got it back, I put new fuel in, bought a new battery. The starter didn't work. I guess there was a wire somewhere, whatever. And so just for fun, I took the plug out, put it on the head, and kicked it. And there was a spark, and I thought, well, let's give it a try. So I must have kicked it about 20 times, and there was a little pop. And I kicked it again and again, and there was a murmur. I think we've got some life here, you know. Went and had a cup of tea, come back, and kicked again for 10 minutes, and it burbled into life. And I couldn't believe it. And it was idling nicely, and I gave it a bit of throttle. And all of a sudden, out of the exhaust came chaff, whatever you call it, that wheat and shit and probably mice and bits and pieces. It was all going in the back of the crash that kept going. There's still coming out. I guess they'd gone through the exhaust up, and they made a nest in the head or something, you know, in the cylinder head, but whatever was there, it was all coming out the back, and it was all over the floor. I mean, must have been a handful like that of something that came out of this engine. And then I let go, and it just idled, and it just burbled. I sat back and thought, bloody hell, it lives. So, yeah, but it certainly gave those mice a rough ride. May they rest in peace, or pieces. Yeah, I mentioned to this friend of mine in Montreal, who's a really good bike builder. And I said, I've got this CB550. And he said, oh, brakes aren't good on that thing. He said, you need another disc on the front. He said, single disc isn't good. And I said, well, what's it going to take? Nothing, you know. Now, you know what? If I was in Montreal, I'd probably say, okay, Jose, go for it. His name is Jose. Okay, Jose, go for it. Mind you, if I were in Montreal and having this guy as a friend, this thing would look probably very different by now. And it would be probably putting out its max power. The guy's amazing. Amazing guy. His mark of preference is Laverda. He loves those things. And I can tell when I was a really good friend of his, because he said to me, would you like to ride my triple? I said, yeah, sure, you bet. So I rode the triple, and I was gone for about an hour, and he wasn't worried, which is another great thing. So good guy, good builder, knows what he's doing. I met Jose. The house that I moved to in Montreal, there was a guy upstairs, had a bike, and he used to do some work on his own. Then one day this South American turned up, and he started to do some work on my neighbor's bike, and we got talking, and when he found out that I was into bikes as well, we formed a friendship, and we've been friends for a while, and as I said, you know, he's a really good bike builder, and I know that if I gave him this bike, he would come back looking different, that's for sure. The guy's an artist. Yeah. If he sees this, I want a freebie, Jose. I bought a donor bike, which is a bit of a wreck, but it had those those crash bars on it, and I thought that was worthwhile putting on. I mean, I didn't want to drop it and take half the engine off. I didn't want to drop it, period. But so that, that's a nice addition to it, I think. Sometimes when you just sit and look at it, you say, it should be more like this or less like that. Initially, I thought about having straight up handlebars out here. In fact, I bought some. I got them somewhere in one of these boxes. But then when I looked at the donor bike, and it had these Ace bars on, and real ones too, I think, I thought, well, no, I'll go for the whole, cafe racer thing. And that, one idea, it just materializes into another, and it has the look, and that's what I like, and it has the sound, that's what I like. I didn't. My thing was I was going to paint it British Racing Green because I like British Racing Green, and then I thought, well, it is a bit dark, and the last thing you want on a bike is blending in with the scenery. So I thought I'll get it painted nice. I kept seeing cars painted yellow, and I thought that really stands out, and stands out is exactly what you want it to do. Especially with all these blind motorists that go around, and especially when they're all attached to their devices. They shouldn't be texting, but they do, we all know that. Anyway, so I thought about this yellow, and then I thought, I'll find a place that can do a nice job. Well, I pontificated, and in the end, I saw a can of paint at Canadian Tire spray, and I just thought, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, whatever. So over the course of the winter, I started painting, and lo and behold, it kind of works. I think later on I may get a real professional job done on it in terms of paint, but right now I'm out on it, riding it, and it works, and I can be seen. So yeah, enough of that horrible flame stuff. And the seat wasn't upholstered. I didn't have the Ace bars on it. It's just morphed into. I sometimes sit and look at it and say, should be more like that. Should be more like that. This, that, and the other. And anyway, it's working. I mean, I'm out on the road riding it, and it goes pretty well. What can I say? I like it. I like it like that.